board or the owner or whoever is in charge, way at the top, has to be a good leader. And in order to be a good leader, you can not only help make the rules, but you have to abide by them. And that has to work down through the whole organization. People have to understand that, especially people that are just hired, people like yourself, who come to an organization, you can have all kinds of different backgrounds. But what's most important is that you read the rules of the organization you're working for. And you have to understand it. Don't ever be afraid to ask, what does this rule really mean? You really have to feel in your heart that it is a kind of rule that you can live with. Because if you are at an organization and in a very short period of time, you find out that this is just not true. All of these rules are not true. Without telling somebody, you recognize you're in the wrong place, you better move on. Because it's just going to make you not like you want to be. So that if the leadership in an organization sets the rules, how you should function, and what you have to do, and that means all aspects of the organization. Some of that lapses over to your own life, your home, your church, your friends. You need to understand what those rules are in your heart. So please go out there and get those rules. And if in my organization, I make certain that everybody knows what the rules are, what you have to live by, and if you don't understand, please ask. Because if you break a rule, you're gone. You never get a chance to come back. I could go into, over the years, some things that happened that we were not pleased with as an organization, the people, the person, and a leader. Never, ever, when you're in charge, hire that person back. But you have to feel in your heart you're in the right place and you can abide by the rules. Very important.
We're not even open for business, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. I remember taking Dr. Carl Fisher's class in ethics, and we talked about corporate culture, ethics, and moral dilemmas, and I didn't think much about it at the time. But we're not even open yet, and we already ran into a few issues. And we're trying to, brewery's a cool business to be in. It's a great industry, but it does start from the top. And we ran into an issue when we were trying to raise funds. We accepted a guy's money. We didn't know him too well. We heard a few stories about him. We took his money because we needed the money. After a few weeks, he had a few things going on in his personal life, which could have slowed us down in terms of getting a federal application through. And right away, we realized, why did we take this guy's money when he had moral and ethical issues in his life, and it was already bleeding into us. So we actually bought him out, just so he wouldn't not only slow us down, but we did want a corporate culture of with values and morals that we believe in, and this guy just didn't fit in. So you got the boot.
One of the things, as you interview for positions, is understanding the culture of an organization and what the norms and values are. For us as employers, I can probably teach any one of you how to do a set of accounting ledgers or sheets, no matter what your major is. Skill sets can be taught. One of the most difficult things is trying to determine when you're sitting down and interviewing with someone is do their morals and values match up with what we want as an organization. And that's just as critical for you as you sit and talk to someone to get a good understanding of what, as Kevin had said, what are the rules and what are the norms that are expected, because you're going to have to work there. Now, I've been in the same company 34 years. Kevin's been running one for 30 years. Nick's starting one. But none of the changes depending on longevity. You got to be happy where you're at. And if you can't live with what their expectations are or meet up to their expectations, it's not a good fit, and you should move on as quick as possible.
And like you said, you're going to be hanging out, dealing with these people probably more than your own family. So you're going to want to surround yourselves with the right people.
Great. Well, let's have a shout out for Dr. Fisher, that one student in 30 years remembered something from one of her classes. Let's go. Great job, Nick. Any questions? Okay. Why don't we talk about, we have a lot of business and finance majors here in accounting. Talk about, as you enter your year or you're raising money, how important or is it important to have a budget, and what does having a budget really mean? And what happens if, when it goes to the previous question, people are playing with the budget or fudging the budget, or what does the budget really mean, and is it gospel in a company?
I believe we live and die by the budget, but there's always a balance in terms of, especially in the beginning, in terms of having enough capital to survive and also putting yourself in a better position in the future to be better positioned to expand and grow. So it's a constant what is needed now and what you hope to do in the future. I can tell you that initially we were hoping to raise $850,000 in funding through private investment and through loans. That number ballooned over $1 million already. And we're lucky that it took us 2 years to actually plan it out. And we're lucky we spent the time doing that. Because if we didn't and we went with our initial budget, we would have been underwater already. So budget for us was critical.
John?
Budgets are guidelines that you need to work within. Sometimes your budgets, we have banking relationships, and the banks expect you to meet those bottom line numbers. When you have budgets, there are flexibilities in some of those things, and some of the things I have for our sales management team as we're going forward is, this is your total budget. You need to get the things accomplished that you want, but if you want to short one area of a budget in order to spend additionally in another because you can get a better return, that's acceptable. But the total numbers are what we got to hit. And the most important thing is also budgets are dependent upon revenue. If revenue goes down, budgets have got to be reviewed again and reduced where possible. Otherwise, you get into an insolvency. And you don't want to go to a bank and say that we're not making any money, because banks love to loan you money when you got it. There's an old adage, bankers give you umbrellas on sunny days and they want them back on rainy days. And that's very true, because they expect you to meet those abilities to pay. So budgets become very critical in those situations, especially if you have any revenue shortfalls coming in.
In our business, as I said earlier, we don't manufacture anything. So we represent manufacturers. And the manufacturers give us a number every year as a quota that we have to hit. Because if we don't hit that number, we don't represent them any longer. It's as simple as that. So once we get these quotas in, we have to guide our business as to how we're going to reach those quotas. So, as Nick said, the key for us is truly that balance. We need to have all our resources out in the field, working, relating to the customer, because we need to drive what we call volume, making those sales. So, making the sales is one thing, but we have to obviously do it and cover our costs. So that's about as much accounting as I know. But truly, the balance of any organization is driven by the budget. As John suggested, if you're not hitting those numbers, you have to start cutting costs, and that is across the board. Employees, it could be, you can't change the cost of the heat, but you're going to be able to, you need to adapt and move quickly if you're not hitting those numbers.
One of the differences for us as a private company is we don't have the same pressures that a public company does on hitting market expectations. So we can make some decisions on a budgetary basis that are longer term than just a single year, and look at how our expenditures might be played out over a longer term, where in some public companies, they've got a requirement to hit quarterly numbers. So there's some differences in abilities that you get when you look at the difference between private and public corporations.
It's interesting too, because even we had to take some risk with our budget, because we had an opportunity with the Industrial Development Agency, working with them, when there was huge tax incentives. But to close down that deal, we realized it would cost us $10,000 to $15,000. I know it doesn't sound a lot, but for us starting up, that was a lot of money. We invested it, and we chose to take on that risk because it was a huge opportunity down the road in terms of saving like $75,000 through pilot programs and a few other incentives for our employees and investors. So we decided to take that risk. But, budgets are key, but you sometimes have to not break the rules, but think ahead.
Well, factors change.
Yeah.
The other key word in these budget discussions is tracking what's going on in your business. And not only in your own business, but your industry. You have to understand trends. You have to be always looking for what these manufacturers are in our industry are wanting us to do, using their information to be certain that you're able to hit those goals. But you got to track everything in your organization. This year, the cost of heat has gone up. You got to track all those minuscule things. Are your sales there? When we have weather like this, our sales go down. We're in Western New York, most of it. But when people can't get to make sales calls, you don't get orders because people are not getting to work at the syndrome. So you got to track every little thing, and that's part of that balance.
We have a question here from the gentleman in front.
Nick, I was wondering, what are some of the unexpected costs that you came across while starting up a company, and how did your company overcome those unexpected costs?
Well, we tried.
Can everyone hear I'll repeat the question. What are some of the unexpected costs that Nick's come across in trying to start up his business? And I forgot to announce, if you have to go to class. And if you have the 6 o'clock class, you plan to wrap up right at 6, and your professors know that you might be 2 minutes late. Hey, go ahead, I'm sorry.
For us, the biggest thing was leasehold improvements. We set aside a number. It was $250,000 originally to put into renovating the building. That was the key factor as to why we had to raise more money, because it's closer to $400,000. And some of the stuff came down to basic structural things. We thought we did our homework, and I think we put a lot of time into it. But there were all these unexpected renovations in terms of refrigeration. We had to structural issues in the basement that we thought the engineer took care for us, but he didn't. So a lot of it was leasehold improvements.
Any questions? Yes, sir. Rick.
Did the budget over the course of while you were trying to figure it out over those 2 years change like your vision for how large the brewery was going to be, or capacity in which you could operate?
It's funny because a couple of people we were trying to raise funds from right away. They wanted us. We're going to try to be a production brewery. Number one, we really don't want to get into the restaurant business, but there is a lot of pressure locally to have food, which we unfortunately had to cater to a little. But a lot of people hated the fact that when we were pitching our ideas to them to say, "Oh, we want controlled growth." They wanted like huge returns right away, or for us to get into canning right away. But we were, we actually lost them as an investor because we didn't want to go in that direction. We, long term, as these guys were talking about, it's going to take us time to get where we want to be, and just to rush into it, it's not going to happen. It's, you got to really take your time and, stick to your forecasting, but be a little flexible, but stick to your vision. That's why it also matters where your money's coming from.
Yes, question over here.
Can you talk a little bit about what comes out of the process of comparing actual to budget? What do you learn from that process, and what is the next step?
John, why don't you grab that one?
Well, obviously, as you look at your actuals, you're trending. You're looking at your historical actuals as well as your current actuals to see if the budgeting process is correctly reflecting where the trends are going. Just a couple of the comments that Kevin made, there are many outside factors that can be changing in your business that you're not measuring or tracking, but all of a sudden they become apparent in your financials. We own a Ford shop in Syracuse, New York. One of the things that has killed the Ford shop's profitability is two factors: importations of steels and the duties that have climbed on those in the last 4 years, and the cost of fuel. Running a Ford shop means you're running several large furnaces. The price of gas and fuel oil to fire those furnaces has just gone through the roof because they've been adding surcharges. And all of a sudden, when you start to sit down and look at your cost of products, you're finding out you can't cover the surcharges on the forgings that you're charging on a per piece basis. So as you look at actual budget, bringing it back to that, you're looking, okay, this is what I have budgeted, my cost to me to manufacture this run, because they do production runs versus continuous runs. And what you're finding is this variable cost has gone through the roof. So as I go to do my next bidding on that, I've got to change that variable or know the trend lines, because again, up until this year, the price of fuel was carrying surcharges on it, just was driving the cost and importation duties. Thanks to some government actions, went through the roof, neither of which we control.
Just for those who can't picture what a forging is taking steel, heating it very highly, and then stamping it to get strength.
And
And
dropping a hammer on it,
all
just
like
like
a
a
blacksmith.
blacksmith would.
so,
They're 1,500 degrees, and you take them out and you hit them with a 2-ton anvil.
nice place to work in the summer.
shape. You did?
Nice place. No, I've been to them though. Nice place to work in the summer.
But right now, this time of year, the job's not bad as a forger. You stay warm. Summer's a little hotter.
Hey, Kevin, you've been at this for quite a long time, so I don't want to say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but talk a little bit about some experience you've had where just when you thought you had it figured out, something unexpected came up. And as our students here are getting ready to enter the workforce, try and relate it back to either when you were younger or you have some new employees coming in, and maybe can you learn from younger people as you've gone through your career?
Well, the learning is very important. You folks are here, you're taking these classes. But learning is something that you have to continue to learn forever. Not necessarily in a classroom, but learning is extremely important. Because basically, and I'm looking at this from a broad view, okay? Learning has to be continuous. Because the first thing it teaches you, learning teaches you that you need to continue to learn. Not only at your job, but at every other aspect of your life. I mentioned that earlier. The second thing learning teaches you is what you're good at, all right? You learn your inherent skills, your genetic makeup. If you don't do well in high school chemistry or biology, the chances of becoming a doctor, a medical professional, are pretty slim. So much of what you folks are getting is you believe that if it's not hard to learn, it shouldn't be easy, is what you find. But just think, some of you are gifted to be finance people and accounting people. There's no question about it. I told you before, I was probably the worst accountant in the world. But it's not any different than being blessed with being a good musician, or being a good artist, or being a good athlete. Think of what you're doing well at without really trying. If you're doing well in college chemistry and college biology and biophysics, I can hardly spell that. You should be thinking of, I don't suggest you have to be a doctor, but I would think that you may well be able to run a pharmaceutical company or understand those things that are science oriented. It's really important to learn. The other thing that you learn, and we had a discussion about this a little bit earlier, is what you don't have to learn. Okay? If you're an accountant